What is going on, folks? My name is Spice of the Spice Camp Fish, and today we are going to be talking about the bladed jig. So the chatterbait or the bladed jig has been one of my favorite baits to catch fish in the spring, summer, fall, pretty much all times of the year. And there are a variety of trailers that you can throw on the back of a chatterbait. Some people don't even throw a trailer on the back of the chatterbait. Personally, I like to add a trailer to the back of my chatterbaits or bladed jigs. I think it just adds to the profile and it will also somewhat help with the action. And that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about in today's video. I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks, go over a whole bunch of chatterbait trailers or bladed jig trailers that I like to use, explain to you why I think they're really good, as opposed to some other trailers that might not be so suited for a chatterbait. I'm going to explain when I use each of these trailers, when I would switch from one trailer to another, and overall just give you guys some tips and tricks to maybe help you guys hone your chatterbait skills a little bit more. Now, like I said, a chatterbait or a bladed jig is one of my confidence baits. I throw it pretty much all times of the year. I don't really throw it in the early spring or the really late fall, but pretty much that pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, all the way through the fall. I absolutely love throwing a bladed jig. When I started throwing bladed jigs, I really didn't care what kind of trailer I put on it. I would put a swim bait, I'd put a crawl, I'd put a fluke, I put pretty much whatever I want on the back of a bladed jig and just fish it. And it seemed to work for me. I didn't really notice that one trailer over another would work for me. I never really thought about the trailer as adding any sort of action to the bait or changing the action of the bait at all. I just put a trailer on that I thought looked good and went out and tried to catch some fish on it. And you can do that. You can go out and put whatever kind of trailer you want on your chatterbait. Just go out there and fish it. And it works perfectly fine. But what I noticed as I started fishing a chatterbait more, really understanding what makes a good chatterbait versus a bad chatterbait, and more importantly, what makes a good chatterbait trailer versus a bad chatterbait trailer, I realized that there were certain situations where certain trailers worked really well and really helped me get a few more bites that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I've got maybe 20 trailers or so to talk about in today's video, so we're going to try and speed through them as much as possible. I want to explain to you guys when I will use each specific trailer, what I think makes a good one versus a bad one, and kind of give you guys some insight as to when you might want to use one of these specific trailers. And we're going to go over a lot of really basic stuff, so you guys are going to see a lot of stuff that you've probably thrown on the back of a chatterbait, but I've also got a few baits in here that I don't think a lot of people talk about on the back of a chatterbait that I personally really like to use, just a few little sneaky ways to kind of change your profile up a little bit. And just offer the fish a little bit of a different presentation. It can really help you get a few more bites. But again, this is probably going to be a pretty long video, so we're just going to hop right into it. And I figure where better to start than one of the first baits that I probably put on the back of a bladed jig, that being a little swim bait. So this is the Berkeley power bait. I believe it's the Power Swimmer. There are a ton of different little swim baits on the market. I used to just throw a swim bait on a chatterbait and just call it good. I thought it was absolutely perfect. And you can go out and catch fish with that. I know a lot of people like to throw a little swim bait on the back of a chatterbait, and it works really well for people. Again, this was one of the first baits that I ever put on the back of a chatterbait. I know a lot of people love throwing a little swim bait like this on the back of a chatterbait. I personally don't do it as much as I used to, and I'll explain why in a sec. But actually, to explain that a little bit better, let me actually grab another swim bait real quick. Alright, so this is a Kaitech, this is the Swing Impact Fat, and then this is again that little Power Swimmer, and I'll explain to you why I like the Power Swimmer for a chatterbait trailer as opposed to a Kaitech, which I don't really like for a chatterbait trailer. So I first heard this in a tactical bassin video. I honestly wanted to see if it worked, so I set up a camera underwater and I actually saw the same thing that they were talking about. What ends up happening is these Kaitechs are super soft. You can see how much action that's getting in the tail just by me barely moving it in my hand. It's getting a ton of action. Whereas if you do that with this little Power Swimmer, you don't get nearly the same amount of action. You get a little bit of action right there, but you don't get that same like wide kicking action. Now that's what makes the Kaitech one of the industry standards for a swim bait. Just on a normal swim bait hook or like a swim jig or something like that, they work really well. On a chatterbait though, they just have too much action. That big wide tail kick actually messes with the tighter vibration of the blade on the chatterbait, and you just get a really weird looking profile. It doesn't look natural, it doesn't really chatter that well, it doesn't really get bit all that well. So if you want to throw a Kaitech style swim bait or any of these little small paddle tail swim baits on the back of a chatterbait, I would really suggest taking a look at the type of plastic that they're made out of. This power bait, all the power bait lures are kind of made out of this tougher plastic, which kind of inhibits the action a little bit, which isn't fantastic for a lot of applications. But for a chatterbait trailer, it actually works really well, which is, again, why I like that little Power Swimmer. And that's what really, I think, makes a good bladed jig trailer, if you're throwing a swim bait, that is. You want that tail to not have a ton of action. You don't want it to be able to have a lot of free swinging motion like you would on the Kaitech. So again, I like that little power swimmer because of the plastic consistency. I think that kind of dampens the action a little bit and makes it where it doesn't make that tail kick up and look super unnatural and stuff. The other one that I really like is the Lake Fork Trophy Lures. This is their boot tail live magic shad. They also have a regular live magic shad, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this is the boot tail live magic shad. And this thing, actually, if you can see, has those little ribs on it, which makes it a great little chatterbait trailer. Still has a ton of side-to-side action, but those ribs, as you can see, they're very one-dimensional. So it lets the bait move really freely left to right, but it doesn't really let that tail move up or down at all that much. So it really inhibits the action that way. This one, you get a ton more action out of it. They are a little bit less durable than those power bait ones, but you get a ton of action out of these, and they are an absolute killer little bait. Now, a bait that I'm really looking forward to try out as a chatterbait trailer is actually this. This is the 13 Fishing My Name's Jeff.
My name is Jeff.
It's a really interesting looking little bait. It's kind of got like this oval, flat body shape to it. Never really seen anything like it. Should be really great for skipping and stuff. If you like to skip a chatterbait, I know a lot of people like to skip chatterbaits under docks and pilings and stuff like that. I'm not very good at doing that. I don't have the best skipping ability, and I usually just bird's nest. So I tend to throw my chatterbaits just out on long casts and whatnot. But if you really like to skip chatterbaits, that'll be a great little chatterbait trailer for you guys as well. And what I really like about this one is it has a tail, but it's not like a really big boot tail style tail. I don't know if you guys can see that really well, but it's a very small tail, and this is what a lot of people do if they throw a Kaitech on their back of their chatterbaits, is they'll kind of cut the tail off on either side of like that little T section where the flat bit of the tail connects to the actual rest of the tail of the fish or swim bait, not a real fish obviously. But yeah, instead of having that big wide boot tail on it, this one is just kind of like a flat, almost squarish shape. Really interesting looking design. Really excited to try this out and see what it can do on the back of a chatterbait. I think that should have some really killer action, that really tiny wispy tail. So we're gonna have to try that one out and see how it does. Alright, so kind of sticking with that same profile, we're actually going to talk about stuff like this. These are, I'm just going to call them like chatterbait design trailers. I guess they're pretty much just like smaller swim baits and stuff, but they don't have that boot tail style tail on them. They just have like a normal forked tail, almost like a fluke or something like that. This one is the Gary Yamamoto Custom Baits Zako, or Zako, however you say it. I also have a couple more over here that I really like that we'll talk about in a minute, but they're all pretty much designed the same way. They tend to have like those ribs on the back of the tail to give it some more action, like I was talking about with that Lake Fork Trophy Lures. The live boot tail magic shad, boot tail live magic shad, whatever, you guys know what I'm talking about, that little Lake Fork Trophy one. But yeah, again, you don't want a lot of action in your chatterbait trailers most of the time. You can use something with a couple of kicking appendages, which we'll get to in a minute. But for the most part, if you're just throwing the chatterbait over open expanses of grass and like 4 to 5 foot, you don't really want a chatterbait trailer with a ton of action to it. So something like this, where it doesn't have any sort of flanges or anything, or like a big boot tail to kick water, will actually work really well for a chatterbait trailer, which is why they're designed like this. But yeah, really like the Zako or the Zako. They do tear up pretty easily, but they have some fantastic action. I think the Gary Yamamoto Custom Baits tend to have some of the better action of all the plastics on the market, but again, they are really soft, so they do tend to tear up really easily. I also really like the Gambler Komodo. This is a newer bait that just came out recently, a couple of years ago. I've only been able to try them a little bit, but I really like them. They are super interesting. Again, just like very specifically designed for a chatterbait, a little bit of a different profile, has more of like a fluke style tail, I guess you would call that, and then just has like a really thick beaver style body, which should work really well for like helping to hold the plastic on the hook and whatnot. Like I said, Lake Fork Trophy Lures also has their live magic shiner without the boot tail, just has like the regular tail, very similar to what the Zako has. So just pretty much picture this, but with that forked tail on it. It's exactly what it is. Again, really great little chatterbait trailer. I don't have any with me right now, unfortunately. I do need to pick some more up at some point, but that's another great little chatterbait trailer. And this other company that I found called Arizona Custom Baits actually makes this little thing. This is the AFG Force swim bait, I believe is what they call it. Again, very similar to that Zaco or Zaco, has kind of that segmented tail. Very thin tail on this one, so it should give off a little bit more of a I don't know, wispy, fluttery action as opposed to these ones, which actually have a little bit of weight behind them, which will actually have them kick a little bit slower than something like this. But haven't really gotten a chance to try these out a little bit, but they look like they would make some really good bladed jig trailers. So figured I'd just mention those as well. Alright, the next category of baits that we're going to talk about are flukes. Everybody knows about the fluke. Everybody's thrown a fluke before. People love a fluke as a chatterbait trailer. I think they're really good. They have some decent action. Like I said, they are very similar to like the Zacos and stuff where the actual plastic itself doesn't have a lot of action in it. But because they just have like that little tiny wispy tail, they're able to move around really freely. So as that blade kind of vibrates in front of them, this will kind of just wisp around behind them like that and look all erratic and whatnot. The one issue that I do have with flukes though is it seems like every single company of fluke has that little slit down the middle, which works really well if you're just using these on a plain Texas rig, but unfortunately it just makes it really annoying to put a chatterbait on it. Just with the gauge of the hook that most chatterbaits come with, it doesn't really give you a lot of room to actually rig this thing up and have it sit inside the plastic. So either you're ripping them up really easily or they're not really sitting on there right, and I always just have an issue with rigging flukes up on chatterbaits for whatever reason. So I didn't really use flukes all that much up until recently when I was turned on to this little thing. This is the Zoom The Fluke. Not the Super Fluke, just The Fluke. And as you guys can tell, it is very similar to it here. I'll show you. This is a regular Super Fluke, and this is the Fluke. So very similar profile, very similar, overall structure and size and whatnot. This one comes a little bit smaller than the normal fluke, but I'm sure you could probably find these in bigger sizes. But this thing is really cool because it doesn't have that little slit in the middle. Whereas this little fluke over here has that little hook channel in it, which really works better for like a Texas rig or something like that. But if you guys like that little fluke presentation, I would highly suggest picking up some of these and trying them out. They're a lot more durable than your average fluke. They'll last you a lot longer, and they give you the exact same action. Alright, so we're done talking about all the swim bait, bait fish style trailers. Now let's get into the actual craws. So when do I use craw trailers over one of those swim baits? Well, like I said, those swim baits, they don't have a lot of action to them. Generally speaking, I will be fishing those in deeper water. If I'm fishing anywhere from like 5 to 10 foot or even deeper than that, that's when I'll use like a fluke or a swim bait or something like that. Really just any of those trailers that don't have a lot of action to them. It's not going to cause a lot of drag on the bait, not going to cause the bait to ride higher in the water column. That's generally when I want to throw something like that that doesn't have a lot of action. Now, craws, on the other hand, is something that I like to throw when I want the bait to have more action. Generally warmer water, shallower water, a little bit dirtier water as well. That's generally when I'll reach for a craw or like a creature style bait like that to put on the back of my chatterbaits. The reason for that is because a lot of these craws now, especially nowadays, have a lot of those like kicking flanges and stuff on them, and they put off a lot of vibration and a lot of lift in the water. So if you want to be able to either fish your chatterbait a little bit slower or fish it higher in the water column, I generally move to something with a little bit more action, like a craw or something like that. So starting off with the craws that really don't have a ton of action, we're going to start with these. These are going to be like your twin tail grub style trailers. This is the Z-Man Goat in my left hand on your right side, and this is the Strike King Rage Bug, or the Rage Menace. Sorry, I don't know all the Rage products together. But they're pretty similar. Essentially, they're just kind of like those double-tailed grubs. Pretty much a very minimalist body, no action through the body, and then just these little kicking appendages at the end. Work really well for chatterbait trailers as well as swim jigs, regular jigs, stuff like that. Also throw them on a shaky head from time to time. But just great little baits. Absolutely love this style of bait. I don't throw it nearly enough. Again, this is something that I'll throw in probably like that 4 to 5 foot water depth, not an area or a depth of water that I fish a lot with a chatterbait. Usually I'm either fishing deeper or shallower, and there isn't really much in between. But generally speaking, if I don't want a ton of action, or I want to be able to fish my chatterbait a little bit faster, but I still want that craw presentation on the back of it, I'll reach for one of these two. I've also got a couple of craws that I think will work very similar to that. Haven't been able to try either of these craws out, unfortunately, yet, but I will definitely be playing around with them in the spring and summer and letting you guys know how I feel, both on like a standalone Texas rig as well as on chatterbait. But first of all, we got the Gambler Burner Craw, and we also have the 6th Sense Stroker Craw. So if you can see both of these, hang on, let me get these claws undone. There, I don't know if you guys can see that all that well, but they kind of have like that twin tail grub style claws on them. They're not exactly the same as like the two that I showed you before, but they don't seem to have a ton of action to them, enough to give you some good kick and vibration in the water, and also provide some good lift, but not too much to where it's like really thumping like a lot of the craws that I'll show you in a minute. But yeah, this Stroker Craw's got a little bit wispier, longer, more curl tail style grub claws, whereas this Gambler Burner Craw doesn't have that as much. These claws are kind of reminiscent of the what is it, the Missile Baits Crawfather, I believe, is the craws that I like to use that have the claws that are similar to that. But overall, I think both of these should work really well for chatterbait trailers. Again, haven't gotten a chance to try them out all that much yet, but I'll let you guys know in the spring. Alright, and the last category of craws that we're going to be talking about in today's video are going to be craws that have a ton of action to them. So stuff like this is the Cajun Lures Kraken Craw, I believe, or something like this is the Grande Bass Crush Craw, I want to say, or stuff like the Rage Craw, or anything that have like those really wide kicking appendages to them. These are trailers that are going to provide a lot of lift, a lot of vibration, and a lot of kick to your bait. These are trailers that you would normally like to throw either in really shallow water applications, like 2-3 foot or less than that even, or something where if you want to be able to fish your bait a little bit slower and still be able to fish that 4 to 5 foot range, that's when you would throw something like that. So again, they just have a ton of action to them. Everybody's thrown a Rage Craw. Everybody knows how much action a Rage Craw has. These other two craws are very similar, just very similar profiles. They all have those like flanges at the end, so they all give off a good amount of vibration in the water, and overall are all just some really great chatterbait trailers. Again, I think a lot of these craws are very interchangeable, especially as a chatterbait trailer. They're moving so fast in front of these fish's faces, I don't really think that they can see them all that well. So I really don't think it makes that much of a difference, the smaller like finite details in each craw that sets one craw apart from another. It's one thing if you're fishing them on the bottom on like a Texas rig or something where a fish can have a really good look at it, but as a trailer for a chatterbait, I really think that each of these craws are pretty much the same thing. Alright, so we're going to actually get into a few different types of baits that I don't think a lot of people talk about, and I really don't know why. I use these baits a lot in a lot of the same situations that I use a lot of those other baits, which we'll get into as we talk about each individual one. But I really like some of these baits. Just offer a little bit of a different profile than what a lot of people are throwing, and sometimes gives a little bit different action. Alright folks, if you made it this far into the video, I am now officially going to be running a giveaway. Like you guys saw in the beginning of the video, if you were paying attention, there is going to be a giveaway in this video, and I figured since we're doing a chatterbait video and it is springtime, the absolute best time of the year to throw a chatterbait in my opinion, I figured I'd throw you guys a chatterbait and a pack of trailers to go along with it. So we got a 3/8 ounce Z-Man original chatterbait in the white and chartreuse color, and we also have a pack of the chase baits, curly baits in the milk flash color. It's the 4-inch size. Should be a perfect little pairing. And the two of those should go together perfectly well. Again, it's a little bit of white and chartreuse, and that milk flash is a little bit more gold in it. But again, both white shad baitfish minnow style colors, so should work super well together. So if you guys want a chance to win these baits, all you have to do is like the video, comment down below something, and also hit that subscribe button. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. And yeah, that's all you gotta do. Pretty simple, pretty standard for most YouTube giveaways. I feel like this is kind of how everybody does it. But like, comment, subscribe, same as usual. The comment is obviously the most important part. Like I said, I need to be able to find you guys and be able to get in contact with you. So make sure you guys leave a comment so I can go down below and pick someone out of the comments to win this stuff. But yeah, really hope you guys are enjoying the video so far. Hopefully it's at least somewhat educational for you guys and you guys are learning a couple of things. We got a few more trailers to go through, and hopefully you guys will see a few things that maybe you haven't tried yet. But yeah, make sure you guys enter the giveaway if you want to, and we'll get back into the chatterbait video. Alright, so the first group of baits that we're going to be talking about are swimming worms. If you guys don't know what a swimming worm is, it's pretty much just kind of like a micro curly tail or ribbon tail worm. That's kind of how I think about it. It's like a curly tail that doesn't really have a tail anymore. They just give a little bit of a kickoff at the end of them. But what you can do is you can actually cut these down about halfway, or if you've burned through a bunch of them and you just have like halves of ones laying around, you can use the second half and just kind of rig them from here onto your chatterbait, and they look really, really good. I did this once just during a challenge video just because I ran out of plastics and didn't have anything to put on the back of a chatterbait, and these fish that I was fishing for in that one particular video absolutely love these worms. I don't know if it was the scent or just a different profile, or maybe they just like the little thin vibration that these things give off, but whatever it was, these fish absolutely loved having a little swimming worm as a trailer. And it's not something that I hear a lot of people talk about, so I just wanted to bring it up real quick. I think you guys should definitely give these a shot. These two in particular, this is a Buddha Baits. I think this is the Swagger Worm is what they call that, and this is the Gambler Burner Worm. So both really good options. I'm sure there's like 1,000,001 of them out on the market. I don't really have a lot of confidence or throw a lot of swimming worms most of the time. Actually, I think pretty much the only time that I've had really good success with them was as a chatterbait trailer. So I definitely need to throw them just on a Texas rig in general some more, but really great little baits and really underappreciated baits, the chatterbait trailer. Next, sticking with the whole worm theme, let's talk about these. These are just your average finesse worms. This is the 4-inch, 4.5-inch, something like that, zoom trick worm, and then this is the Smash Tech taper worm. I really, really like this bait in particular for a chatterbait trailer, but any smaller finesse worm will work absolutely fantastic as a chatterbait trailer. I don't know why people don't throw these a lot. In my mind, they are very, very similar to a fluke. Again, they don't have a lot of action back there, just have kind of like that whippy tail, but I mean, you guys can see how much action that thing has. We all know how much action a finesse worm has on the back of like a shaky head or a drop shot or something like that. So when you put this behind a little vibrating blade, it looks incredible in the water. I don't know what it looks like, maybe like an eel or something like that, but it's just kind of like a long, slender profile, and fish go absolutely crazy for it. Here, I'll actually rig one of these up for you. There, you guys can laugh at my terrible raking job on that. I just rigged it up there real quick to give you guys an idea, but generally that's what you'd be looking at. It's just kind of like a thinner, really more finesse-y presentation, if you will. Again, you get that little wiry, wispy action. That's especially why I like the Smash Tech taper worm, is because it tapers off to a little bit thinner tail. But again, that zoom worm works equally as well. Just a great little option for a chatterbait trailer that I think a lot of people overlook. Again, a lot of people like that fluke, which has that do-nothing presentation, that almost no action and just kind of flutters behind the chatterbait as the blade kicks side to side. And I mean, finesse worms do pretty much the same thing behind a chatterbait, so definitely give that a shot. Alright, so these last two baits I'm actually going to talk about together. You rig them kind of similarly, which is why I'm going to talk about them together, but they are two separate types of baits. That being a brush hog style bait and also a beaver style bait. So everybody knows beavers and brush hogs, absolutely fantastic flipping baits, but they actually work really, really well on the back of a chatterbait. What I like to do is I will actually take a brush hog or a beaver or something like that, but they also work really great as a chatterbait trailer. So I'm going to use this little brush hog to show you guys, but it works perfectly well with beavers as well. I'm just not going to rig one of those up as well, but you want to rig these up so they're sitting sideways. I generally like to take these two little arms off and usually bite it down just before where the arms start as well, but I'm not going to tear my plastics up all that much for the purposes of this video. But you're going to want to run this down and just rig that on like you would pretty much normal, except you will see I rigged that sideways. So what you're looking at is you got one of these little curly tail things pointing up, and you got one of them pointing down. And when that swims by in the water, it looks almost like the back fin of a fish, just kind of undulating back there. And it looks really, really good underwater. I can't really explain it to you guys right here, obviously, but you guys are just going to have to try it out for yourselves. Take my word for it and go try it on some fish. But yeah, I'll do pretty much the same thing with a Beaver style trailer as well. I really like the Pit Bosses from Berkeley, Power Bait. The Strike King structure bugs are also a really good option. They're just absolutely fantastic, especially the structure bug looks so good on the back of a chatterbait, especially if you rig it on its side like that. I've done it with bandito bugs. I've done it with a few other ones. One bait that I'm really excited to try out this year is this. This is from J. Corwin Lures or JC Orwin Lures. I don't remember what they call this. It might be the mongrel or something like that, but absolutely sweet looking little flipping bait. It's kind of a mix between a brush hog and a beaver. It's got that beaver flange at the end, but it's also got kind of more of an enlarged, elongated brush hog style body. So this should work really well. It is a little bit thin, so I'm a little bit worried about that it might get tore up a little bit easy, but really excited to play around with these in the spring as well. But yeah, that is what I think about chatterbaits. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hit that like button if you did, and also subscribe if you want to see some more content from me. Let me know down in the comment section what y'all's favorite chatterbait or bladed jig trailer is. I am always down to try some new trailers, and I love to know what you guys are throwing. So just let me know what you guys have been throwing around recently and what's been catching you guys fish. Also, if you guys want to see another video where I break down another technique very similar to this video, if you guys like this, let me know down in the comments. If you guys have a specific type of bait that you want me to break down in a video, give you guys my honest thoughts and opinions about, then I'd be more than happy to do that. Just let me know. Again, this is Spice Can't Fish, so I don't know if you guys actually want to hear my opinions on this type of stuff, considering I can't fish. But if you guys do want to hear me talk about some other baits, really break them down and hear my honest thoughts and opinions, let me know down in the comments. But I think that's going to do it for me. I'll check and wreck them, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out. Peace.